I love silk screening on clay. I'm putting all the supplies together that I'll need. It's so easy. I'm going to show you how to do it so that you can silk screen on your clay projects. Before you make your silk screen to screen onto your clay projects, you've got to start with a transparency. To do that, you're going to need a printer and you're going to need some transparency film. The transparency film is easy to find. You can usually find it at Office Supply or on Amazon. You buy whatever is best for your printer, whether you have ink, jet, or laser. The other thing that you're going to need is actual silk screen material, which I get from Ikon. It's Ikon Art. You get it from ikonstencilart.com, and if you use the code CLAYPRINTING, you get 15% off. The other thing that I use is a couple of sheets of just plain copy paper, and you will need a light to expose it. You can get that from Ikon Art, or you can get it from Amazon. It's about $35, $39, well worth it. So that's what you need to make your silk screen. To print, you're going to use the fabulous AMACO Velvet Underglaze. This is so color dense and great for printing, but it's a little bit liquid when it comes in the 16-ounce jar. So what I do is I take it and I pour it into a pie pan until it gets really nice and thick. How thick? Just whatever you need for the printing that you're going to be doing. Once it gets thick like that, I get these 8-ounce jars and I put the ink in the 8-ounce jars so I can store them in my studio and use them whenever I want. If you have any questions about how to make the ink, or you're still a little confused, it is very easy. But if you have some other questions on that, I'm going to do a whole separate video on the inks and the colors that I think work the best. So we're ready to make our silk screens, and then we're ready to print on our clay. I found some images that I want to use, and I have my printer ready, and I have my transparency film loaded in here. When you buy the transparency film, there's two different sides. There's a rough side and a smooth side. You want to print on the rough side. You'll know you did it wrong is if it prints out and it kind of smears. You need to use the other side of the film. I've found some images that I want to use. The problem is, they're pretty pixelated. So I can either go smaller, if I know Photoshop or other editing software, I can resolve it. I'm going to show you an easy way to do it with a Sharpie a little later. But I'm thinking this is going to be too large and too pixelated. I don't want to use it, so bang, it's out of there. Here are my bananas that I showed you earlier, and I'm ready to now print those on my transparency. The transparency did not want to come through that little printer, and this is not uncommon because when you go to print that slick paper in your printer, sometimes those little wheels don't want to grab it. So what I do is I take a sheet of my transparency film out. I take some masking tape, and I'm going to put one strip of masking tape along the bottom of my transparency. Put that tape across the bottom so the wheels would pull it in. But if I put one single sheet of transparency, sometimes the printer thinks there's no paper there. So I put a stack of paper, but so that the other paper does not feed in with the transparency, I just kind of put a little clip right here. The other thing that I'm going to do is sometimes the transparency doesn't want to really feed as fast as paper does. So on my computer, I'm going to take my image and I'm going to move it down so that it's not at the very top of the page. Let's load our transparency. Make sure it's rough side for the print side. Go to print, black and white. Sometimes I do help it. And now I have my transparency and I'm ready to make my silk screen.
Often I find an image online that is a little too pixelated. One of the ways you can fix that is through editing software like Photoshop, but sometimes I don't want to do that and I would like to work more directly. After I print off my transparency, I can use a Sharpie marker and trace over areas so that there's a solid line. This also works if you want to put a transparency over a photograph and trace so that you get more of a hand-drawn look for your silk screen.
Once you have all your transparencies done, you're ready to make your stencil. Your stencil will look like this, so that this is what you're going to use to actually silkscreen onto the clay. I order Ikon Stencil Art film. When you order it, you have one decision to make. You can get this, which is purple in color, and this, which is blue in color. What's the difference? They work great on clay, either one, doesn't matter. But this is very, very flimsy, and this is a little bit stiffer. I prefer this one, but I have used these and they work great. When you get this, it does have a sticky side because it's meant to stick on to other products so you can do some stenciling. It does come with a plastic sheet on the back. And it's important when you first start using them that you keep that plastic sheet and keep this on that plastic sheet until you've used these enough and the sticky is gone from printing on the clay. How do I know that? Like this, because sometimes I'll stack them up together and they'll stick. So you want to make sure that you kind of lay them flat. Once the sticky is all gone, then you don't need to worry about it. It's not going to be a problem. Now that we have our transparencies made and we have ordered our Ikon Stencil Art film, now we're ready to move to the other table and make our silk screens. I have my transparencies ready and now I'm ready to develop my screen. When you get your Ikon Stencil Art screens, they come in this light sensitive pack and you don't want to pull them out ahead of time because they are light sensitive. They are mesh with that light sensitive stuff already in it, so there's no need to have any other material. This will make your silk screen. Your room doesn't have to be ridiculously dark, but I am going to turn the lights off and then expose the screen. To expose the screen, I'm going to use this. This is a speedball light. You can get it from Ikon Stencil Art, or you can get it from Amazon. It's a UV light, and it takes 35 seconds to develop this screen. It does not look like it will work, but trust me, it will. So we're going to hook this up to this that's right above my work area. I'm going to clip it on so it stays. And I have it about 12 inches from my work area. I am working on a rigid piece right here. I've got a piece of glass, but it could be cardboard or anything like that. And I do have it covered with a black felt. And I like to use a black surface. I'm going to put down my transparency. I'm going to put down my Ikon Stencil Art. I'm going to put down my transparencies, and they do give you a piece of plastic to put over it, but instead you'll see that I'll use a sheet of glass. I like it because it's kind of heavy and it holds everything together. And then we'll do our 35 seconds and develop our stencil. You'll notice that I have my stencils on a sheet of copy paper. That way I can figure out how many stencils I will get, or how many transparencies rather I'll get on a stencil. Now we're going to take our stencil out of our package. And it has two sides, a shiny side and a matte side. You don't need the shiny side because the shiny side is just a plastic sheet. You want it with that matte side up. Now I'm going to arrange my transparencies onto my stencil. Once I have that done, then I'm going to put my sheet of glass over it to hold everything down. And I'm going to turn on the light for 35 seconds. Doesn't look like it'll work, does it? I turned the light off, I took the glass off, took the transparencies off, and now I'm going to take the stencil to the sink. I have a bucket of water at my sink, and I'm just going to put the whole transparency down. The Ikon Stencil Art website tells you to put it on a clipboard and start rinsing it out, but sometimes I'm busy like doing something else. So I just dunk it in the warm water, and then I leave it for a few minutes for it to soften up, and then I'm going to put it on here and rinse it off. The stencil's been sitting in the water for a few minutes. You can already see the image coming up. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go ahead and clip it onto this sheet of glass. They suggest a clipboard, which I think is a great idea. And remember, you have a piece of plastic on the back that needs to stay there for now. And now we're going to rinse it with some water. And wow, look at that. It's already starting to wash off because I darkened that with a Sharpie marker and the color was real black, and now it's washing out great. You can see that my sunflower has really worked out well because I had all those darks. The lemons, pretty okay. I think I'll be able to clean them out. This one is having a little bit harder time because it has all those really thin, fine lines, and maybe the lines weren't as dark. Once I darken this with a Sharpie marker, you can see how well this flushes out. The better your transparency, the better your stencil. Sometimes to flush them out, I'll take a grid like this. This is just a grid from a light that they use in ceilings. I will take this and it's got a clear backing, remember. You want to keep that, but I'm going to remove that from now so I can rinse all of it straight through so that plastic is not keeping it from washing out. I'm going to put this white sheet of glass up under my stencil so you can kind of see it a little bit better. Sunflower, great. Lemons, they'll work great. This one, I don't know. I am going to work on it a little more, but I think the lines just were not dark enough. Now I have my stencils hanging in my studio to dry. You can see how clear they are, and they're going to print great. That one printed, or this one developed well, this one developed well. This one really didn't do too bad. I have my stencil dry, and now I'm ready to use it, and I'm going to print on this little slab. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to just cut the excess away. I do like to leave a little bit around here because when I apply the ink, if I cut exactly to the image, that'll make it more difficult. Remember, this has a plastic backing. You pull this off before you print because, of course, Silkscreen is all about the ink going through the mesh and the openings. But this does have a sticky back, and this does wear out after time of using it on clay, but they do make it so that you can stick it to objects and then Silkscreen or etch blast, things like that. After I use it, I put it back on this plastic because sometimes I'll stack them up and they stick to each other. So you want to watch out for that. So we're going to lay our stencil on our clay. Now we're ready to print. What are we going to print with? We're going to print with AMACO Velvet Underglazes. They come in a jar that looks like this. 16 ounces of underglaze will make 8 ounces of printing ink. How do you make it? It is so easy. All you have to do is take the underglaze, put it in a pie pan until it gets thick, the consistency you need of your ink, which would be like this. Then you get a jar, you stick it in the jar, and your ink is ready to use. If it gets too dry, you can re-moisten it. What kind of consistency you want? You want it so that it won't drop off a spoon like that. And it should be the consistency of Silkscreen ink or block printing ink. You can apply it with a squeegee, of course, so you can get these kind of little squeegees at places, or I really like this one, which is a Cheryl rib. I use this all the time, but my most favorite and the easiest is this little yellow sponge. So I get the round sponges and I cut them into quarters. Then I can take, you need just a little bit of ink. So when you slake this down, you evaporate the water off and you only have 8 ounces. Don't worry about it because you use like just a little. Why? Because velvet underglazes are packed with color. They have so much color in them and they're so intense, and they're even more intense when you let them evaporate off. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of ink on my sponge and I'm just going to rub it into the silk screen. And that really helps you get a nice, good, thick layer versus using a squeegee. Now I'm going to pull this off. Oh my word. Look at that print. On clay, I print like this flat. Why? Because I use moist slabs to then build my pieces. So I print flat and then I build. I don't build and then sit there and go, what should I do? You've got to try Ikon Stencil Art. Oh, it prints so great. See you next time.